last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Marty Miller here with fellow Master Instructor and dear friend, longtime friend, Wendy Batts. How's it going, Wendy?
It's great, Marty. How are you?
Good. We will have another longtime friend joining us today. I'll let you do the intro, but anytime we talk about nutrition, I always get excited because even though we're hosting the podcast, I always walk away with some aha moments myself, like I got to change this, tweak that. So I'll let you kind of tell our audience what we're going to be talking about today and who we're going to be talking with.
Yes. And Marty, you and I can both talk nutrition, but I love when we get to have a very special guest. So we are going to have Kat Barefield joining us. And if you guys have not listened to Kat on our shows, you need to go back and listen to it because she's been a integral part on the nutrition side, especially on the Master Instructor Roundtable, as well as with Random Fit. But Kat is a registered dietitian. She is the VP of Nutrition Services at .fit, and she's one of our Nutrition Master Instructors when we go out to present, globally. So we're super excited to have Kat join us. So let's bring her on. And we're going to be talking about the macronutrient factors that most trainers miss. So hello, Kat.
Hello, good to see you both.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And like I said, I'm excited for our audience, but selfishly, when I was looking at this, I'm like, I've got some questions for Kat. So I'll start it off right out of the gate because I think this is a topic we've learned from Neil Spruce, who's obviously you've spent the most time with and mentored by. You know, what are the primary micronutrients and what roles do they play in the body?
Okay, so I love geeking out on this topic because trainers love talking about the macros, right? Protein, carbs, and fats, but like very rarely geek out on the micronutrients. And so as you guys know, the macros, protein, carbs, and fat, they give us calories, they give us energy, right? These are the ones we want to manipulate the most to change body composition, help clients lose weight, etc. But the micronutrients are just as important. And there's about, 35 or 40 of them that are required in human metabolism. And they're essential, meaning we need them, but we don't synthesize them endogenously within our body. So we have got to get these from an outside source. And if we don't, something suffers, if you will. There are consequences when you don't meet your micronutrients. And micronutrient insufficiencies in our country, it's a big problem. And like nobody is really talking about, well, I shouldn't say nobody, just we're not talking about it enough as fitness professionals. So, vitamins and minerals, vitamins A, vitamins D, vitamin C, vitamin Z, and then the minerals, you'll have calcium and magnesium and an iron. Again, there's like 35 or 40 of them that are required.
So Kat, that kind of brings me into the next question because I'm always curious about where we are in the States, especially when it comes to macronutrient deficiencies. So where are we in the U.S.?
Yeah, so with the macros, right, the protein, carbs, and fats, people get too much of those, right? Like we consume a obesogenic diet, if you will, high in calories and then low in micronutrients. So, depending on who you read, like for instance, the Dietary Guidelines Committee, they have identified about 5 key micronutrients that most people fall significantly short of. And so I wrote this down to make sure I covered with you guys. So vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, and then iron, especially in women who are of reproductive age. But it's not just that. It's people are falling short of various other micronutrients, but it's not necessarily as widespread as the 5 that I just mentioned. And like I said, there are consequences when you don't give your body enough of these micronutrients across a lifespan, and we don't notice it until it's too late. So that's why I think trainers should talk about it, because every trainer I know wants to help people, right? And typically a client's like, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. And so you got to manipulate calories, when in reality is that 6 out of 10 people have a chronic disease and 4 out of 10 have at least 2 chronic diseases. And guess what those chronic diseases are tied to? Not just calories, but also micronutrients, getting those essential nutrients.
Yeah, this is great, Kat. And, we both, all three of us have been in the industry forever, but I remember 2007, I had joined a new country club, and Dr. Morris Notelevitz comes up to me, and he, introduces himself, and he still is a president of Adult Women's Health Alliance. And he was the first person to tell me about vitamin D and to go get my blood checked. And I was like, it wasn't on the radar. And he'd been preaching it since the late 80s that, this was going to be a huge issue. And here we are years later. Now everyone knows more about vitamin D. So it just sparked that story. I was like, that's the first time I really heard about that. And I was in the industry, so you've already kind of talked about how common it is for people to have these micronutrient deficiencies in the US, but how quick can some of these people turn this around if they follow the right supplementation? I'm assuming, because I'm hard to get all that through changing just the diet, I would guess.
I mean, yeah, it's possible, but hardly anybody does it. And so it depends on which one you're talking about. And what's crazy too, Marty, is we don't test for these things, mainly because of the philosophy around medicine and healthcare in our country, not being proactive, mostly being reactive, but also because some things you can't test for. So I'll give you a classic example. So vitamin D you can test for. Vitamin D, you can get a blood test and you can see what levels you are, and then you can either increase your dietary intake of vitamin D. And to your point, vitamin D isn't really naturally occurring in very many foods. You're supposed to get vitamin D from the sunshine, right? But most people work indoors. So supplementation is something that you can utilize to raise your blood levels fairly quickly. And you can do that on your own, or if you're very deficient and your doctor actually tests for it, which by the way is not necessarily covered by insurance, right? Can prescribe like a mega dosage of vitamin D. Now, check this out. When it comes to calcium, right? Most of the calcium is in our bone. Calcium obviously is very important. The other 1% is tightly regulated in our blood. You can't test your blood levels, because your body keeps calcium really tight in a very tight window because it's needed for nerve transmission and muscle contraction. So you take a blood test for calcium, you can't tell if you're deficient, right? So you have to pay attention to your diet, to how much you're eating. And if you're not paying attention, then over the course of a lifetime, what develops? Well, you guys know, right? Osteoporosis, risk of fracture, all those things happen. So you don't know that you're not getting enough until it's too late. And then you end up with a chronic disease, a chronic condition, and now you can't really go back, right? You can somewhat build some bone density up, but I mean, you stop building bone around age 30, maybe earlier. So we have a tight window. I mean, I know I'm all over the place, but it's like, it depends in certain micronutrients. Some things you can test for, some things you can't, some things you can fix right away with your diet or supplement. Something, if you wait too late, it's too late.
So Kat, this is, again, I'm going off script, so don't kill me. But based on what you said right there, obviously you're saying that we can test for certain things. There's certain things that we can't. But then if we can't really test for it, how do we actually know we're deficient in it? I mean, is there a certain delivery source that we should just do as a preventative? Or is that, you know what I mean? Are we going to then get too much of something? Is that a thing?
Yeah, so it is a thing. It is a
Yeah,
thing, but
I know
that's
the
not
answer
the
though.
most common thing. Like the most common thing are that people are falling short of various micronutrients, but they're not so deficient in it where they're presenting with a disease condition. For example, vitamin C, right? People don't, I think vitamin C, 43% of the population does not meet recommended daily intakes for vitamin C, but they're not so low that they get scurvy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mhm.
So that is a problem. So what can we do, especially as trainers, as fitness professionals? Well, we've got to one, become educated. Like, what do people need to consume in order to get all their micronutrients? Well, you already know the answer. Most people need to consume mostly whole foods, right? Then they've got to get like 3 servings of calcium rich foods a day. They've got to get adequate sunshine every day. They've got to get 3 to 5, no, I would say 5 to 9 servings of colorful fruits and vegetables. They've got to get like 3 to 4 fatty fish meals a week. So you've got to learn a little bit about nutrition. What does the human body require and how can I attain those from food? And then if people aren't consuming all their micronutrients from food, and by the way, like hardly anybody, I don't know anybody that does. My philosophy, personal philosophy, is you take a high quality multivitamin and mineral to fill the gaps that most people have. And then if you need to fill the gaps because you're not getting the omega 3s, or you're not getting the vitamin D, or you're not getting the calcium or the magnesium, then you can supplement with those things. And I think the problem is, to your point, is that a lot of times people will go overboard. They think, I need some of this, so why not take more? And so you can end up abusing, right? Over consuming various things. Um, and that's where, people can get into trouble. But again, eat the best you can, I would say. Try to
Yeah.
improve your diet. And if you're a trainer, you've got to learn what that looks like and trying to encourage your client in that direction. And then if they're not, getting all their needs met from food, and again, most people aren't, then supplementation is a viable way to fill nutrient gaps.
Wow, my head's all over the place. I've got so many. As I said in the beginning, I'm going to be excited because I'm going to learn. So, if I had to make some assumptions, I've heard this, and I haven't done the research like I'm sure you have, and everybody at Top Fit is. Even the food we're eating nowadays isn't as nutritionally dense as it was years ago for all kinds of reasons. So, are you better off just assuming that even if you try to eat healthy, like Wendy knows how I eat, I'm a salmon guy, I'm vegetables, but even still, I'm going to assume I'm probably going to be under. So, is it better just starting with going into a baseline, which I do, still trying to eat like that? And like, could there be a sign that, okay, maybe you don't need as much supplementation? Like, would it come out on a blood test? Would there be another sign or symptom that you might have too many micronutrients, or is the odds of that causing a problem like slim to none?
So getting too much is can happen, and it typically happens with supplement abuse. Like people are consuming way too much of it. They don't know what they need. They just think more is better, and they mega dose with single vitamins and minerals, right? Whereas if you go with a basic high quality multivitamin mineral that's going to fill the gaps from your diet, and then the other ones that you can test for, you fill the gaps, like vitamin D, right? Like you can test for omega 3s, are very easy. Then iron is another one that you can test for. Then you can add an additional supplement. But I would not recommend like getting single nutrients and mega dosing for the most part without professional guidance. But to answer your question, if I may, right? Because people ask me this all the time, can't I get all the vitamins and minerals I need from my diet? And so people way smarter than me, right? All these PhDs and MDs and scientists have come together on a committee and put together like what you would need to consume on a daily basis in order to get most of your nutrient needs met from food. Okay? Can I read it to you for a
Sure.
typical female in our country? So let me just read to you how you would need to eat for the average adult female in our country, right? She can consume approximately 1,800 calories and maintain a healthy body weight. Okay, this is an average, obviously, there's variations to this. So check this out. The committee says this lady needs to consume 2.5 cups of vegetables a day, but on a weekly basis must consume the following: dark green veggies, 1.5 cups a week; red and orange vegetables, 5.5 cups a week; beans, peas, and lentils, 1.5 cups a week; starchy vegetables, 5; other vegetables, 4; and then fruit, 1.5 cups a week. Okay, so essentially, right, you've heard this before, you guys. You need to eat fruits and vegetables like the color of the, you said it, didn't you? You said rainbow in your brain, right? Okay, so now let's keep going. Grains, 6-ounce equivalents a day. Half of those should be whole grains, right? Not the refined stuff, but whole grains. Dairy, 3-cup equivalents a day, or milk alternatives that are fortified with calcium, right? Calcium and vitamin D. Now here's protein, 5.5 ounce equivalents a day is what the committee says. Now, you and I know that that is not optimal for exercising individuals and probably not optimal for sedentary, but it's going to prevent you from deficiency. Okay, so here we go. Meat, poultry, eggs, 23-ounce equivalents a week. Seafood, 8 ounces a week. That's going to give you your omega-3s. Nuts, seeds, and soy products. These are plant protein sources that are different than animal sources. 5. Okay, 5-ounce equivalents a week. And then, of course, we need some fat in our diet because fat is essential for our cells, for vitamin absorption, for all kinds of stuff. You need 27 grams a day. Okay, now, if you do this every single day on a regular rotating basis, the committee says, hey, we'll give you discretionary calories. You can have 140 calories to do whatever you want.
You're just going to sit around and eat all day, Kat.
What
if
would
you
you
did
like
that.
to have?
Yeah, 140 calories is not a lot on the
I
discussion
mean,
list.
would you like 2 Oreos?
Right.
You know, like, would you
That's
like a quarter cup of ice cream? Like,
Right.
so this is how you would meet your most of your nutrient needs from food alone. So the question becomes, who does that every single day? And then the typical client that we work with as trainers, what do they want to do? They want to lose fat, gain muscle, or a combination of the two. And in order to do that, we've got to put them in a caloric deficit, which means now we have to reduce their calorie intake. So is it fair to say that most people don't eat like this and being in a deficit makes it worse? Is it fair to say that?
Yes.
Agreed.
That's crazy. So when you break it down like that, I just keep thinking, gosh, who has that much time? And first of all, how many cups do you have to have on your kitchen, just making sure that you've got the red and orange vegetables over here and, making sure the full rainbow is complete. So thank you
Like,
for.
we're all creatures of habit, right? We're all creatures of habit. So most of us eat the same fruits and vegetables on a regular rotating basis, the same meals on what we lack food variety because we're all so busy and stressed out.
Mhm.
So this is, to me, like, think about it this way as well. Okay. Wendy, when you were pregnant with your son, what did the doctor give you to take?
A multivitamin, a prenatal. Yes.
Right? And so you started taking a prenatal vitamin. Why? Because researchers figured out that missing certain nutrients was tied to stillbirth and neural tube defects. And so they were like, let's give every mother a prenatal vitamin to make sure she's getting all the micronutrients that she needs for a developing baby. So then the baby comes out and you breastfeed and you still take that prenatal vitamin, do you not?
Yes.
Or you switch to formula, which is fortified with vitamins and minerals, right? And then you start feeding them solid food, and then they get to be toddlers. And then what do they eat?
Nuggets, mac and cheese.
Right? Just look at the kids' menu, right? And then adults in our country, you know what they eat, right? The standard
leftovers.
American diet. Right. So I'm like, why don't we keep doing what we did? Like, why don't we keep, and our nutrient needs change across our lifespan. So why don't we keep doing that? I don't understand. And I actually do understand. I think it's a capitalistic, sort of approach to healthcare that is getting in the way of doing better.
Right. No, this is fascinating. And again, looking where I'm at, I am blessed. I don't cook. I know it's hard. I know, don't fall down when I say that, Kat. I know it's hard for you to think that, but last night for dinner, my fiance, she is a fruit and veggieaholic. So the good news is, and she owned a restaurant, she knows how to cook all these things just with seasonings, and I've introduced her to why we want to use the olive oils and things like that. But like, I'm so blessed and I feel so good. We had farro, we had red and orange peppers, we had garbanzo beans, we had ground turkey, we had avocado in it. And that's one meal. But I was thinking cauliflower. I was thinking my kids, they're grown now. There's no way they're eating that diversity that frequently and switching it up like you're saying. So, it's not just eating an apple a day type of thing, because you have to have that diversity. So, being blessed by knowing Neil Spruce, he looked at my blood work, and I do the all-in-one super blend, and my vitamin D levels are good, but they were more at the highest. So I take that and I take an omega, and, I'm so lucky to have you and him around, but man, I could see how complex it would be for most people to get that type of food prepared for them or help. So what is a couple key takeaways that you could give, because we know what our trainers are facing in their routine and their clients? Like, do you have a couple key takeaways as we continue to talk about this, where it's like, okay, no one lives in a perfect world, but let's move towards this?
Right. So for trainers, it's all about education, right? Like, you've got to talk about micronutrients, how important they are in health, right? It's not just about body composition. It's also about how well your brain ages, how well your bone ages, how well you can protect your heart and your lungs and your whole system. So you've got to learn about micronutrients, and you've got to talk about micronutrients, and then sort of, integrating in your assessment process, how high quality is your client's diet? Are they getting a variety, different colors of fruits and vegetables? This is just asking good questions. Are they eating 3 to 4 meals a week of fatty fish with the omega-3s that our brain needs and our immune system needs? Are they eating 3 to 4 servings a day of calcium-rich foods? Are they getting enough vitamin D levels? Do they know what their vitamin D levels are? So as fitness professionals, I really do think we have to be more multidimensional. We can't just be about exercise programming. We have to also take a look at the total person, and that includes looking at nutrition. And then I am a proponent, just like a prenatal vitamin. Let's make sure you're plugging your gaps. It's just like car insurance or health insurance or renter's insurance or pet insurance. Like, have some nutritional insurance to make sure that you're at least getting, the essential nutrients that most people are missing. Does that help?
It's phenomenal. That's great. Thank you.
Well, Kat, I will say, I will not tell you what I had for dinner last night, but let me just,
you can tell me. There's no judgment.
Does it start with chick and end with filet?
Probably, because we had baseball practice, and
that's why I said it.
I like Chick-fil-A.
Oh, me too.
Yes, I do.
I mean, that's the difference of Marty having grown children and grandchildren that can't eat solid food yet. And then here I am still in the midst of, okay, we've got 5 minutes to eat. We're going to do this and eat in the car. So there you go. But before I ask you my next question, I wanted to say that today on the Master Instructor Roundtable with myself, Wendy Batts, and Marty Miller, we have very special guest, Kat Barefield, joining us. Kat is one of our registered dietitians that we lean on very heavily, and especially today when we're talking about the macronutrient factors that most trainers miss. And this episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable is brought to you by NASM One, which is the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources, get the Edge app to schedule and program clients, enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access free CEUs, and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM One. So, Kat, my question, because, you're talking a lot about this is how much you're supposed to have. And this is, women are going to be a little bit different because our iron deficiencies, because of our menstrual cycles and all of that. But can you go into a little bit more detail about what are the recommended daily allowances for these key micronutrients that you're talking about? And then how does that vary by age and gender?
Okay, so this is not a 30-second answer. So we have a lot of tables. Scientists have come up with a lot of tables, and they put together the recommended daily allowances for all of the vitamins and minerals. So again, it depends on which one you are asking for. But for example, calcium is a classic one, right? So most adults need around 1,000 milligrams a day. And then once we reach age 50, essentially menopause for women, it increases to 1,200 milligrams a day. And the reason why is because you need estrogen, right, to absorb the calcium. So as estrogen lowers because of menopause, you need to consume more. Now that doesn't happen in males, so their requirement doesn't go up until age 71, I believe, right? And you also need to go along with that to show that all these vitamins, minerals tend to work together. You also need to maintain ideal vitamin D levels. So ideal vitamin D levels are between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. That's ideal, but sufficient, okay, is above 30 nanograms per milliliter. So you need ideal levels of vitamin D in order to allow your body to absorb the calcium. So that's just one example. And all of this stuff, obviously, I've studied, but trainers can study and learn this stuff as well. It's just a matter of maybe taking the right courses. You don't have to go to school and get a master's degree in nutrition. I've helped write the CNC course that talks about this stuff. So, you got to get educated. Obviously, there's Google, which is wonderful, and AI, which is wonderful, right? But you've got to get educated as well.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. So can you explain how micronutrients interact with each other and why this is important for overall health?
Yeah, so that was a classic example, right? So calcium and vitamin D work together. Same thing with magnesium. Maybe people don't know that most of magnesium is in your bone. It also interacts with vitamin D. Same thing with the immune system nutrients. So you might need vitamin D in order to help with inflammation, and the omega-3s also help create pro-resolving mediators to help reduce inflammation. So all of these things are sort of intertwined, right? They're intertwined and they rely on each other. And then you have nutrient interactions as well, which is why I'm not a fan of megadosing. So, like for instance, too much of one thing, too much iron at one time might inhibit the absorption of calcium, and the opposite of that is a little vitamin C, but with a little bit of iron rich foods help increase the absorption. So typically we don't need to worry about things if you're eating the best that you can and not, mega dosing with vitamins and minerals.
Well, to piggyback off of that, Kat, is there like a population difference? So when we're thinking about that, are there like a higher risk for micronutrient deficiencies with specific populations? And is there a reason for that?
Yeah, 100%. So like some classic examples are, iron, like you said earlier, right? Women of childbearing age, we're still getting a menstrual cycle. And so we shed, right? A blood, of course, is where iron is. And if you're not paying attention to your diet, and adolescent girls tend to not eat an iron-rich diet, then you can end up developing deficiency. So iron deficiency anemia, and then that could lead to things like weakness and fatigue and low energy levels, etc. So that's one example. Now you look at menopausal women without with their estrogen levels that have decreased. So again, estrogen is required to absorb calcium, and so they're going to be at risk for osteoporosis later on in life unless they're maintaining their vitamin D levels as well as getting all these bone building nutrients. Now, adults, as we get older, everything gets less efficient as you get older, right? So you're at risk if you're older, of vitamin D deficiency because you just don't convert the cholesterol in your skin to the active form of vitamin D in your kidneys and livers. That conversion process gets less efficient as you get older. So you're at risk for vitamin D deficiency even more as you get older. So there's lots of different examples of this. Which is why it's important to pay attention and get educated about micronutrients, which again is what I think trainers should be talking more about is micronutrients and the quality of life. You're not going to be 20 forever or 30 forever. One day you're going to reach 50, right?
Yeah, I've reached
Yeah.
it, so I get it.
Yeah. And your body is going to pay the price for what you didn't do, you know?
Right. Right. No, that's a great
Yeah.
point. So, Kat, my last question is I think we do a good job understanding this for our macronutrients. So the athletic population, the high intensity people, the people that are really working out hard, they know they need more protein, and depending on what type of activity, sometimes the carbs as well, if they're endurance athletes. How do the recommendations work for our micros if you're truly, a high volume, higher intensity, high frequency exerciser? Or does it change at all?
Yeah. So typically an athlete that's high volume, high intensity, et cetera, they eat more food. Right. So in general, eating more food will provide a lot of these nutrients, especially the B vitamins and the vitamins surrounding energy production. But then you have certain nutrients that you might miss that you might need more of. So for a classic example of this is magnesium. So we need magnesium for like 300 different, processes in the body. And you utilize magnesium more because you need it to synthesize and utilize ATP and all these metabolic reactions. Well, you also lose magnesium through your sweat. So if you're doing heavy sweat, if you're exercising in the heat, if you're even using sauna, your magnesium requirements increases 10 to 20%. So then the question is, are you eating more magnesium rich foods such as leafy greens, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and or are you taking a supplement to make sure that you're covering your bases? So certain things you are going to need more of.
Awesome. That's great information. Thank you.
Well, Kat, so my last question actually just came up. So it's really not my last question, but it's going to be the last question. How about that?
Okay.
You mentioned something about the CNC, and I still think there's some confusion out there. So if you can clarify, because you are a registered dietitian, you have a different scope of practice than myself, Marty, and many other trainers. But can you talk about the differences between what is a certified nutrition coach and then what is, in comparison to what you do, like within our scope of practice, just for clarity. And then you talked about, why this would be really good for someone to take, especially if they want to dive deeper into the nutrition aspect, how this could be a helpful specialization for someone to look into.
Okay. So CNC, essentially, Certified Nutrition Coach, allows you to educate people on healthy eating and proper supplementation. You get to educate, you get to be a coach, right? Whereas a dietitian like myself, we have different requirements. We have to go to school and get a degree or two. We have to do a 15-hour internship that has different rotations, like working in a hospital. And then we have to sit for a board exam and pass that exam. And then every 5 years, we have to renew this credential by making sure we stay up to date with the field. So here's the main difference. As a dietitian, not only do I have to do more in terms of academics, right? But I can now do what's called medical nutrition therapy. I can use nutrition to treat a disease or a condition. Okay. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I have diabetes, I can, as a dietitian, write out a meal plan, make a recommendation to help treat diabetes or hypertension, etc. Right? Now, as a nutrition coach, I can't do that, but I can educate that person on what healthy eating is. How much fruits and vegetables to eat, how much calcium rich foods I should eat, how to eat a low salt, how to reduce the sodium in my diet. So you can be an educator as a nutrition coach. Does that make sense?
100%.
Crystal clear.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Kat, I'm going to wrap things up here because if not, it'll be 2 hours later and we'll still be talking about all these amazing things.
We haven't even talked about omegas, but that's okay. Maybe we need another episode.
Well, if you want to throw something in at the end on omegas, feel free.
Yeah,
I want to hear it.
Okay, so just really quickly, I don't think a lot of trainers know this, right? So dementia and Alzheimer's. Do you guys happen to know anybody that has dementia or Alzheimer's in your family?
Yes.
Okay. So 1/3 of our brains, 1/3 of the neurons in our brains is made up of one of the omega-3s, DHA. And do you know what dietary sources has DHA? Fatty fish, right? And microalgae. So what do you think happens over the course of a lifetime if you don't consume fatty fish or adequate amounts? If it's the structure of our brain. And so 95% of adults in our country do not get adequate omega-3. in their diet on a regular basis. And we can now measure how much omega-3s are in our body with a simple blood test. Oh, by the way, not covered by insurance. Don't ask me why. Okay. But not covered, but you can measure and see what's in there. And studies have shown, there's extensive body of research on this. Studies have shown that if you don't eat fatty fish for whatever reason, okay, maybe you're allergic, maybe you don't like it, et cetera, you can raise the body's levels of EPA and DHA with proper supplementation. Now, it's not just the brain, but your omega-3s are also needed to help with healthy inflammation levels. Chronic inflammation can accelerate the aging process, and many believe that it also is a precursor to chronic disease. It increases your risk of chronic disease. So there's a lot of different factors or things in the body that need omega-3 levels. Can you just eat some more fatty fish? Can you eat more salmon or mackerel or tuna? And if you don't, then maybe you should get your blood test levels and see where you're at. And that little change in your diet, that little simple, easy change in your diet can have big time impacts over the course of a lifespan. And Mo, by the way, doctors are now giving pregnant moms, DHA supplements to help with proper brain development in kids. Like, why do we not talk about this?
No, it's critical. And I'm so glad you brought it up as a takeaway, because Wendy knows I eat salmon like 5 days a week if I can get my hands on it. And I got my grandson eating it as early as possible, and he loves it. So thank goodness that I'm a salmon fan.
Well, and they also have, my son, he's 8, and they have so many supplements now where they're chewables. So he takes 4 little chewables. And he thinks it's fun because they gush in his mouth, but they don't taste terrible. The omega-3s, but there's also one for vision, sight, and it also includes the all the letters that you were talking about. And it's in a gummy. Yeah, so it's great.
There's all kinds of stuff. So
awesome.
He's better at it than I am, by the way.
Awesome. Well, we can't thank you enough, and we will be having you back. We've got so many other topics to talk about. So thank you for your expertise and your time today. We really appreciate it.
It was fun. Thank you for having me. See you
Thanks,
next time.
Wendy, as always, we learn as much, hopefully, as our audience does. So, got a couple key takeaways.
Always. She's great.
Yes. So we will have her back soon, I'm sure.
I think we absolutely should.
Well, everybody that joined us this week, we thank you for your time, and hopefully this topic really kind of sparked some interest. Check out CNC. Please also check out our sister company, DotFit, where Kat is the VP. You're going to get great deals, great supplementation through our partnership with them. So can't thank you enough for joining. And as always, we hope to see you next time on the Master Instructor Roundtable.